Hi there, my name is Ola Jungerius and I'm your host of our third episode of Being Breach and Beyond in Season 2. This episode is dedicated to global security and law enforcement. Joining us today is Manuel Amarilla, the global security advisor who will share his 30 years of experience of working in police, military, Interpol and United Nations. Manuel completed more than 40 field missions and market surveys with cross-country records in Americas, Africa, Middle East, Asia, Oceania, and Europe. He is a ground operational specialist in diplomatic, corporate, and travel security, crisis management, strategic planning, and implementation of critical programs at high-risk theaters of operations. Very impressive. Together with Manuel, we discussed the importance of cross-cultural communication in global security, psychological safety in the missions, and how it impacts mental health and suicide rates. Power play and privilege in law enforcement, the danger of imposing Western values where they are not understood nor needed. And finally, what are the consequences when the law enforcement officials forget their primary mission of protecting the rights and freedom of the ordinary citizens, and then being the servants of the society rather than power play for governments? Very interesting conversation, and let's dive into this journey. Manuel, hi, how are you?
Hi, and very good morning to you.
It's wonderful to have you here today. And our topic for today is law enforcement and security. Personally, I have no clue whatsoever about the topic. That's what makes this conversation even more exciting, as well as for our audience to find out some things hidden behind the curtain, so to say. Manuel, would you like to introduce yourself? Who are you? What do you do? Where are you calling us from? And what's your background? And why did you even agree to do this episode recording?
Okay. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm bringing a topic that is nowadays maybe contested. And in my case, I'm a Spanish. I'm talking to you from Spain at this very moment, but I am normally based in Brussels, Belgium, the European Union. And then I'm coming with a background of having worked for the public and private security industry for the last 30 years. I've been working for the Spanish Ministry of Interior as a police officer, and I've been working as well for United Nations as an international police officer. I've been working as well for Interpol and for the private security industry in different security companies as a director, as an expert in the field, and then working in different regions, whether it was in Latin America, Africa, Asia, Europe. I had let's say, the privilege of being working in hotspots in the Balkans, in the Caucasus, in the Middle East, or recently in Afghanistan, or in other conflict areas more, let's say, diverse. The word of conflict sometimes is related to war, but sometimes it's related to our own societies in places where our communities, they are living under constraints or insecure environments. So I'm graduated in different fields, but my major one is law enforcement and as well international politics and security studies. I do have a MA in international security from the Bradford University in the UK, crisis prevention management from Spain, and also I'm professionally graduated by the Spanish Ministry of Interior. So that's me, and I hope that I can bring my best know-how and experience to this interesting topic.
That's wonderful. You have truly remarkable career and truly remarkable experience. All the big names that are there, United Nations, being in Brussels, being in Interpol. So a lot of things that a lot of people hear about on the news and know that if you work in these organizations, you're involved in global affairs, but not many people know what is actually behind. And for us today, we're not going to talk about specific organizations. We'd rather kind of zoom out a little bit and understand what does law enforcement actually mean and how is it related to diversity and inclusion. So before we're going to go more into details, what is the relationship and what is the status from your perspective, from your experience, when you talk about inclusive leadership and diverse representation when it comes to global security and law enforcement? And I know it's a very broad question, but if you are to answer that, what has been your experience in either a particular organization or as a whole?
At the end of the day, the role of the law enforcement agencies or security is to protect citizens. And then it's not only just protecting the physical or the person itself, it's as well protecting the rights. And of course, to keep in mind that citizens, they do have obligations. But the principal or the core element is to protect their rights, their freedoms. So at the end of the day, communities that they are underrepresented or they present a different level of reach out, they should be the priority for the law enforcement agencies. Unfortunately, my lesson learned is that the reality is different. So we in the law enforcement or in the public security sector, in the private security sector, we are having enormous problems to understand these concepts, because we have a tendency to protect the rights of the nations or the governments, and we sometimes we forget that our core business or client should be our people, our citizens. So whether it's at the national level or at the global level, the situation is really fragile. And my lesson learned, whether it's working in conflicts or in Europe, is that that is something of a huge concern, because it's driving our societies to a more radicalized landscape of answers, because we are not ready to understand this difference at the basic level. So then when we try to defend these rights, it's too late. My first experience working with marginalized communities, it was for United Nations, is where I got the idea that we were working to defend or to protect minorities in conflict areas, like in the Balkans. Whether it was because of the language or because of the ethnicity. And that was incredible, the experience, because I found myself not only just in a new environment, but as well in an organization in which diversity based on race was very evident. People working or coming from Africa, from Latin America, from Asia, all of us working together for a common goal, we were representing this diversity. And it was really a shock for me, because I was coming from a very European white environment. And all of a sudden I had colleagues with different ethnicity. And for me, it was the first time to work with Asians, to work with people from Africa, from Latin America. So that was a shock from the culture point of view, for which in my training, in my education background in Europe, I was not ready for. So I had to discover myself working in that environment, learning from the ground what I was supposed to be aware while working in a society like this Latin or Spanish society, where there are other minorities, but we were not focused or trained to deal with. So somehow this is more or less the landscape and the experience that I had in this field.
That's fascinating and very, very surprising to hear that you were not prepared for, when working for a global organization, especially for global conflict zones, not really prepared for cross-cultural communication and intercultural aspect of that. That's very, very surprising to hear. I wonder whether the training now, modern training, has really changed. And the other thing that I really like what you said is that very often those who work in law enforcement, they forget that they're actually servants of the society and not the power that they actually use for themselves. So they rather meant to protect the rights and freedom of citizens, and instead they use, easy to say power, but use their power, so to say, to protect the government. Because it seems to be, and that's probably also why we have so many conflicts around the world, because the priorities have shifted, and probably this power is also to protect people themselves. Is it also because there is a particular representation for those who hold power that binds them together and kind of adds to the top of affinity bias and people who look like me, who sound like me, who have the similar background?
Yeah, I think one answer could be in the selection of recruitment of people working in the law enforcement industry. Is very masculine culture, and as well perfectionist, because at the end of the day they want to find the best candidates to fulfill physical endurance and as well mental endurance. So then at the end of the day they are representing a part of the society that is not the mirror of the society itself. So people that they might have or they might present handicaps from the physical point of view or from the mental point of view, they are not going to be represented in this, whether it's in the military or whether it's in the police. They do have special bodies in which they can apply or they can join, but they are not going to be operational, which is already a deficiency in the strategy to deal with tactics or other elements. Because from that angle, from the recruitment point of view, then to the training, at the end of the day, you might have a force or a body that is not representing the society. Second question, it is that we are bodies. When you are focused on reaction, you are chasing criminals. When you are focused on prevention, you are protecting citizens. So if our system to give rewards or compensations is based on medals for putting criminals in prison, at the end of the day, you do have an answer that is so only focused on that reaction, chasing, arrest, detention, putting people in jail, investigations, because the prevention within these bodies is not working well. That is different, for instance, in the private sector, in which if you don't prevent, your contract is finished, because at the end of the day, they hire you to prevent premises, or let's say to protect premises or assets. While in the public sector, at the end of the day, if they don't recognize this prevention approach, they do have a natural driven approach to the reaction. And also because we are reflecting movies or culture and the way that you are watching in the cinema, how law enforcement or military, they are working. They are always just shooting and killing people rather than protecting the minorities. So this is as well fragile system to select people, to recruit and to train, because those that they might be interested to work in these institutions, at the end of the day, they are culturally biased to become copy and paste of the heroes in the movies. So at the end of the day, it's not only just the fault at the institutional level, but as well at the cultural level of our societies. If our societies they were better educated in terms of what do they expect from these institutions, probably we will get better approach. But nevertheless, the landscape is sometimes is a constant challenge, and I think that there are solutions in the scope, but they are not so easy to be taken.
It seems what you're saying, it's more like a one size fits all approach, right? So there is a particular cookie cutting model that you need to fit in order to be part of this. So it's that adds on groupthink and very limited thinking and the point of view. And especially, I really like what you said about you don't represent the society. You don't really have, first of all, you don't mirror the society. So that means you don't really understand the problems of particular people. And you assume based on your experience what they are, what motivates them, and you act based on your experience. So coming back to the don't treat others how you want to be treat others how they want to be treated. And unless you know, that becomes your blind spot and you just assume. And, we're product of our society. So that adds on blind spots and all the negative stereotypes. And especially when it comes to physical endurance. And if you happen to be a woman or a more, not as a masculine man as it is seen by society, you wouldn't want to be part of this because you're not going to sort of say fit in and you're going to be very likely discriminated. So you don't even want to be part of this. And it's not encouragement for you to do so.
Sometimes there are experiments to change these dynamics, and they try just to put the discrimination policies to select by quotas or to try to open the mindset. But my experience working for or in security sector reform is that, this is like a garden. You might put a reforming effort to have a garden clear from deficiencies. You are bringing the best roses, but a garden is not only just for one day or for 6 months. It's to be taken care for years and years and years. And from time to time, you have to call the gardener again to shape the things. So that is something that is forgotten in many security apparatus. They are not focused on constant reform, adjusting themselves to the new generations, and they become too egocentric, avoiding those changes, avoiding the inclusion of new definitions of gender. And it reminds me sometimes this movie is really sad, Les Miserables, this Victor Hugo, in which there are two main characters, the inspector of police, Javert, and the criminal that needs to be reestablished in the society. I think that we are not too far from that mentality. And this is really sad because this movie reflects 300 years ago, 200 years ago patterns that we are trying to improve now, but there are elements in our societies that they belong to that centuries. So this is a question of, as well of ethical grounds, the ontological approach to reflect these debates. And I'm astonished from time to time to return to work with my former colleagues, and they have not evolved. They haven't had evolution, and on the contrary, they are facing evolution, and that is later on not only affecting our own societies, but as well other societies in which we have to work with. So examples, whether it's in the news, you might have elements that all of a sudden is like reflecting these elements of evolution. How we are dealing with operations in communities that they are minority in the US. How we are dealing with communities that they are representing gender imbalance in Latin countries in which the violence against the women, they are in a very, very fragile situation, the protection of the women per se, with thousands of women being killed by the partners. How that is reflected as well in the landscape of the political speech, obvious. There are people that they want us to behave as if we were just chasing criminals and putting them in jail, and in some cases, they prefer us to kill them in the streets. That's why I'm saying that it's really complex, but we have to understand that security is a key element in the concept of protecting those rights. And if we don't put a lot of attention on this, we might have reversed effects affecting the electoral landscape. The terrorist attack before 2 days or 3 days before an election can move the landscape to a more radicalized society, or manipulate our level of rights. So the importance is key. My sector is key, and sometimes it's not very well understood until we don't arrive to the conflict peak, because we are not investing in prevention. And I think that our education, whether it's at the school level, higher school level, and all this, our society, the better educated it is in terms of equality and diversity and integration, I think that we might have a better outcome for our interaction, the law enforcement interaction, or the security or the military interaction at the national level or at the global level.
Fascinating. Do you see any differences? Perhaps some countries or some societies do a better job than others. So, for example, if you compare some particular countries with Scandinavia, which is very often seen as the more democratic and more egalitarian societies, so the level of power is very different, or would it still be the same across the globe from your experience?
When we are using, for instance, the concept of human security as a core concept where the citizen is the center of the police or the security action, we might find Nordic countries more prone to accept that approach than the other countries. It's not because they might be richer. It's because their societies, they are very better educated. It's not a question of better educated in terms of title or a diploma at the university. It's the critical mindset of how they are building themselves as individuals. So maybe that could be an answer. Those societies that they are very well educated at the individual level from the critical mindset point of view, they usually are more creative and they are more open-minded to understand diversity. While money is not the answer, you might have other societies that they are really rich, like the US society, but you can see that they are not working well in terms of the security concept. So money doesn't buy concepts. Petrol doesn't buy concepts. So what I mean is that these societies that they reflect the human security concept as a core element in their security action, they are better equipped, while the others, they are really behind. And maybe a good approach could be to have an anthropologic understanding of why we are doing this in the security concept or in the military concept. But sometimes it's a question of understanding that quantity is not the answer, it's quality. And for quality means better training, better society.
Absolutely. It reminds me of something I've done as part of a cross-cultural communication workshop a few years back. It was for a group of MBA students, and we needed to talk about cultural differences. And to prepare for this workshop, I don't know how it happened, but I ended up finding 5 different promotional videos, recruitment videos for military in different countries and how they promote joining the military forces as contractors. And there was such stark difference. It was quite old, so a lot of things probably not going to be relevant, but you could see really, really big differences. So I remember US and Australian ads, it was more like Counter-Strike, cool machine, cool music, just like all the guys running around, shooting. So it was like a lot of adrenaline there. For Lebanon, once again, it was a really, really old ad. There was an officer going through the street and everybody was saluting him. So there was a lot of the meaning of respect, the meaning of a lot of authority, but the soft power rather than a hard power. Ukraine, I think it was 10 years ago, it was about friendship and comradeship. So it was a lot about friends of circle and relationship that's with your brothers that you develop during military service. China, it was about cool technology, machines, and all this advancement that you get to play. It was pretty much like a computer game generated at. And UK, it was very, very different. I found it extremely interesting because it was in an African country, and then you, as a representative of military, you had to mitigate your conflict with someone by using soft power, by having communication. You take off your sunglasses. So it was a lot about emotional intelligence. So in that promote the recruits, and it was very, very different, and that really plays into cultural differences and cultural values. At the same time, and I will put all the links in the description for our listeners to see that, because that could be also interesting.
I've been working with the military as well, with civilians and at the international level. The Nordic model, again, working with the military is completely different to other professional armies. I think the participation of the citizenship, of our citizens in the defense and the security sector should be a must. And sometimes professionalizing is not the right answer, because we become bodies close to fresh air. Our window is open once when they are taking the first rookies, and then they are open again when they are getting out of the system, when they are retired. So how to maintain our houses with open windows from time to time? The way of recruiting people with different ages is already an advance, because we can take people that they are young, they are middle age or old. Why not to take somebody with 70 years old in the force or in the military? It's already a discrimination, the basic age agenda. And then sometimes if we don't reflect this, how dare we try just to solve problems? Because we are not representing variety of experience. When you have an officer working in the field, maybe they start to feel mature when they are reaching 50 or 60 years old. So how to share that experience? It's already...
Yeah.
So my understanding is that all these elements of correcting the system, they are there. They're institutions or areas, regional or political system as well, better equipped. I think a democracy is better equipped rather than non-democratic societies, because the accountability mechanism is happening every 4 years, while in other societies there is no transparency, no accountability. So how to change the system in a system that is not changing? So all this matters. That's why sometimes nobody is perfect. No country is perfect. No society is perfect. I think that, for instance, the EU is lacking of diversity in their missions. The military missions and police missions, they are only representing European countries. They are not open to African countries or to non-Christian countries, because in the EU we don't have any non-Christian country by background. So how we are going to learn lessons working with other communities to work in Africa in a Muslim country? if we are sending only just educated Christians. I'm not saying that they are practitioners, or whether they are Catholic or Protestant, but they are educated in Christianity. So how to understand a Muslim community? Examples. During my Afghanistan term, no political leader, no military leader from the international community was able to go to a mosque to approach, to understand the cultural difference. Everything was running away from that particular cultural approach. So then that's why I'm saying that sometimes solutions they are there, but if we don't represent that diversity in our own society, it's very difficult to operate overseas.
That's fascinating. It's this lack of diversity of thought is very, very ironic what you said about European Union, because the slogan of European Union is unity in diversity. But what kind of diversity? Sure, when it comes to nationalities, for sure, but when it comes to religion and when it comes to different other aspects in race, it's also sometimes very often forgetting. And this power play, there seems to be always power play. And I found it very interesting what he said about different policies and different practices. Do you see any change that is actually happening when it comes to trying to tackle this problem, trying to tackle this issue, and become more representation, more diverse representation, as well as more inclusive policy in terms of who is actually serving the country, who is serving the government, or who is serving people?
I see elements, but they are more anecdotic. And as I'm saying that the gardens should be kept, but the system try just to be happy that the outcomes they were okay once, but they don't review the situation. In the EU, the landscape in the law enforcement agencies is becoming darker in the way of, compared to years back, when many countries they were under reform because they were coming from communism, or they were coming like mine from a dictatorship. So the reform was there producing outcomes, and then all of a sudden we are returning to the dark side, painting in blacks our uniforms. So what I'm saying is that the landscape is not reflecting reforms and then reflecting our society, but it's also affecting other sectors. So the debate right now about democracy as a system of accountability is under debate, with a lot of part of our societies that they don't believe in democracy as the best system to live together. So if we do have 40% of our population that they don't believe in this system, something is wrong. And then the outcomes, they could be very challenging.
Yeah, just like Winston Churchill said, democracy is a horrible political system, but it's better than anything else, isn't it?
Maybe he was wrong. It's not the worst. Better is the best one.
Best of the worst.
But I believe that it's the best one. It's not. There are no alternatives.
Yeah.
It's the best one. So sometimes this is one of the reasons why I think sometimes we are failing, because we don't defend the best and just in natural way. No, this is the best way. If you want to see how other systems they work, the best way is to work in those areas, in those places where those systems they are in place. Yeah. Only just maybe in some countries, only the privileged are the ones to be protected. Those that they paid for, or the state as a maximum grantor, while then they can forget about individual rights. As I'm saying before, how do you want to have critical mindset at the individual level if you are just obliging people to think in the same way? So diversity, inclusion, forget about these words. So what I'm saying is that sometimes our political leaders trying to put in balance the political landscape to collect votes from those that they think against and those that they think in positive, they are blurring ourselves in saying, no, this system is not perfect. No, for the time being, it's perfect for us. And because otherwise the questions as we were discussing, like diversity, inclusion, equality, is it like the Republican system? Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's the best one because in theory, everybody is equal before the law. As long as you have another system, somebody is not equal. Maybe one or two or a family. And that is a completely disarrayed with the system of equality before the law. So that's why I'm saying that from time to time we have to defend from the security point of view. My goal is to protect the citizens' rights equally before the law, and then in a system that my action is accountable, and that means democracy. That means Republican ideas. So ideology is as well playing a strong role behind this concept.
I think it's also the point that even those people who want to change, because the power play and the feeling of privilege is so powerful there, that even those who want to change the system, but institutions are so tempting for you to kind of fit in. So even those who want to change the system and have very good intentions and very good goals to actually go and serve the society, go serve people, but you get brainwashed and you get controlled and you're also broken to really fit in and to not really serve people, but serve those who, pay you money, which is actually people.
That goes to the concept of privatization of the security. And sometimes I think it's a mistake. Security is, should be a right, like a health, like education, and it should be done in a balance, in combination of the public and private sector working together and recognizing the gaps. So the question of the power, sharing that power, our society is in transition. Power is more decentralized than before. And we need to understand that we are in a global planet in which the power from Western societies needs to be decentralized, because at the end of the day, diversity is as well a concept of living in different communities. There are communities that they are in isolation and they live in contact with the nature, but they need to be protected, not only just from their own dynamics, but as well from our side effect of interaction with those communities. So, for instance, if we do have a better fiscal system back in Europe, we might protect societies in Africa. Because if we allow money laundering to happen in our doors, so at the end of the day, we are helping, to our industry, but we are making fragile those societies that they are just sending the best people or the people that they need. They are crossing our borders, and our own societies become more radicalized because they start to blame immigrants because of all the failures at the national level, but as well at the individual level.
Yeah, that's what happened with Brexit. That's what happened with Brexit. That's what is happening in Germany with the rise of AfD. That's what happened in the Netherlands. That's what happened in a lot of East European countries, in Argentina. In Argentina, it's not really related to migrants as much, but the world is becoming more nationalistic. In this sphere, and any change is scary, and it's also it's also a lot. I think also in a society now, it's a lot easier to call someone a sexist, racist, bigot, whatever, not, rather than to also understand where they're coming from, where the fears are coming from, and. I mean, we're getting very philosophical here, but I feel that there is also sometimes a lot easier to call someone a racist than understand the fears and acknowledge the fears and actually go for the root cause of the fears. It's a lot easier just to name someone with all those isms and block them and cancel culture and whatever not.
Yeah, there are new elements that they are affecting the way to protect the minimums. And our planet becomes not only just more global in terms of physical distance, but as well the intercommunication has exploded because of the digital fingerprint of our communities. So now it's easier just to express these ideas, radical ideas, in social networks that they are not controlled. We are in a transition from technical, paper educated television, radio, classic media orientated society to a new society in which the speed of the impact of this fake news or insults, people they are free just to say to whoever. Just imagine somebody who is having a debate here in Europe, let's say that, all of a sudden there are people giving opinions that they are coming from the US, from Russia, from Australia, and who is responsible for this fake speech? Who might put this fake speech in terms of going to court because somebody was insulting somebody else in the media? Let's say in social media, if one person might be based in thousands of kilometers. So sometimes our instruments to reduce the level of tension, they are not ready for understanding a new planet that is more digitalized than before. People that they are coming with different backgrounds, different geographical location, they are giving their opinions, contesting science. And this is very basic. Like there are millions that they think that the planet is Earth, is flat.
Yeah.
The Earth is flat.
Yeah.
Well, we already crossed through that debate 500 years ago, and all of a sudden we have to open that debate because there are people that they're coming with medieval ages or before medieval ages mindset.
Yeah.
So education is part of the security instrument as well. So it's not only just to go to court. It's as well to say, well, we are failing in a better educated system, society. And as well to educate those that they are thinking as if they were in the medieval ages, contesting all the science that we have developed for the last 2,000 years.
Actually, now I would like to be a bit of a devil's advocate because I find it's fascinating. From the point of view of education, very often we talk about West problems are world problems, and problems of the world that is not the West, it's problems of the world. And very often we also talk about Western values are the most important values. And if they don't fit into the Western perspective of what success is, what respect is going to be banished or is going to be, okay, let's educate. So it kind of also comes from white saviorism, colonialism, and so on and so forth. And very often we see the West imposing all these values on the countries that have their own values, they have their own resources and their own success. And look at Africa. And all the problems in Africa that are happening now, it's all what happened, 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 200 people from Europe took a map, took a pencil and, drew some borders. African societies, it's a tribal society. It's not really about national borders. So what's your take on that when it comes to values and when it comes to education?
Coming from a multicultural background, because I belong to a multicultural society in which we inherit Roman, Muslim traditions across our landscape. We can see names in Arabic or names in Latin or names in... we have to be very careful in using language to define concepts. Because if in English, Western, it doesn't mean the same than in Spanish. We use Occidente. Western goes to West, and it doesn't mean the same weight when we are defining how we approach the ownership of a civilization. Or Copernicus was born in Yeah, in a country that I don't know whether it was already named by a name that has been figured out recently, but ideas they don't belong to any geographical administrative
Yeah.
landscape. It's a constant evolution. Pythagoras or Hammurabis in the Middle East, we are just building ourselves based on evolution. And nobody is saying that, let's say, Darwin was using evolutionism connected to Western societies. I think our species, let's say, we have inherited know-how and experience based on different societies, the African society, the Asian society. So at the end of the day, we are building ourselves based on those knowledge. Pythagoras was Greek, but technology to send a rocket to Mars is based on triangulation. But those mathematical concepts, they were not developed by the Greek society. They were, but there is a tendency from time to time to confuse administrative borders with human concepts without borders. So that's what is a gap. And sometimes when we open this gap, we should have people from different disciplines to understand the psychological aspect, the anthropological aspect, the mathematical aspect, to have a open debate rather than people giving opinions based on what they are grabbing in the yellow pages without any basics
Hmm.
for understanding these complexities. And as well, keeping in mind that there are complex concepts to be debated by people that they might harm them. But it's a good debate because in the police sector, sometimes we are using the name police and it's very English. But maybe the roots they are coming from Latin or from Indo-European languages. Yeah, we should run away from terms or acronyms
Mm.
that they are only just based on one language.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's the same that if you talk about when I deliver workshops about diversity inclusion in German, the term Inklusion in German has a very, very different meaning because it's more about inclusion of people with disabilities. And for a lot of people, it's misunderstanding what inclusion actually stands for. I like to move also towards inclusion, but from a perspective of psychological safety. So, according to the latest statistics, I don't have exact numbers, but when it comes to psychological safety and when it comes to masculinity, suicide rates among those who serve in military are extremely high. So, and I spoken a lot with a friend of mine who used to be, I think, for 21 years in U.S. forces, and that was quite interesting what he shared in a way. Suicide rates are high, and it's very criticized after Vietnam War in US from US military, and before, even after World War One, World War Two, suicide rates were a lot lower simply due to the fact, and this is one of the theories, it could also be true, simply because after the combat and after being traumatized, you spend months and months and months on ship with your comrades coming home. You talk about it, you discuss that, you cry together, you internalize all those things as well as you externalize those things. But right now, you come back after Afghanistan, Ukraine, Myanmar, wherever in the world right now we have. And then 20 hours later or 15 hours later, you're back home in your country with your family. So you don't really have time to even internalize and grieve. And suicide rates, and simply also because of the notion that you have to be man, you have to be strong, you have to show emotions. Yeah, what's your take on that?
Now, it is a challenge because the way that we are selected, we are already excluded from normality. And then when we are just coping with returns, we all of a sudden we belong to a society that is new to us because we were disconnected, working in a conflict in which you have to put 100% of your common sense for patrolling an area in which you think that they are going to kill you at any moment, then there is a side effect that you forget about your family, about your normal things. And once that you are finished on that duty, that you go back to your cities and you are completely outside of the normal life. You don't. So there are people that they are facing these challenges, but there's a failure as well in the way that we are trained or we are recruited, mainly in the military as well, because most of the military, they are not working back home, delivering security, delivering defense. They are from time to time called to deal with a catastrophe, but not in daily basis to deal with our own problems, communities, like the police. So when they go overseas, to have even less elements to understand that community because they were not dealing even with their own community. So do they think that they are going to understand the community in Afghanistan while they were not able to understand the community in Illinois? No. Because even for me, working for my community for years and years, it is difficult to understand the Afghan community. And I'm better prepared, to be honest, because as I'm saying, in daily basis, I was facing community issues, like not only just crime, but as well dealing with problems that people they were having for paying back debts or the behavior of the kids in the street or helping people just to reach out a neighborhood because they were having an accident. Those things that they become normal in your day-to-day work. So just imagine for somebody who is not having that implication from the professional point of view back home, then when they are exposed to overseas societies, from the religious point of view, cultural point of view, economic, society, politics, they are in a bubble, disconnected, because they need to survive. They are at war, and when they are back, they feel not disconnected. In some cases, they feel traumatized, and they are expected to be treated as a heroes because somebody told them go there because you are going to return as a hero. Maybe the movies, but the movies they are movies. They are stories. They are something that is not. But that could be the main reason. So I know that in the military they are very, very careful with rotations. They try to expose less and less people to be overseas for months, but it doesn't matter because that 4 months that somebody is exposed in a high risk environment has a side effect to be paid.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's such a fascinating topic. I think we could continue talking about it for hours and hours and hours. And funny thing that I don't think you followed any of the questions we prepared. You just kind of went flowing.
No,
It's
we
beautiful.
we have tackled issues also
But it's even better.
of quality of the training, selection,
Yeah.
a better equipped society, whether it's a democracy, not a democracy, the challenges, examples. We were tackling a lot of things, maybe in a very disorganized way.
Very free way. I love it. I love it. I mean, it's a little bit of a recap. What will be your advice or your hope or your wish those who are part of the law enforcement as a servant to make it for them to be a better equipped servants of society, as well as recommendation for those who decide who is there to serve the society?
I think for both, because at the end of the day, the message is that we are protecting our citizens. We are protecting people. That means their rights. And that's simple, to keep that in mind, like a logo, like a mantra. Whether they are at the upper level or at the low level, it doesn't matter. The low level is even more important than the upper level because they are to face the citizens. So maybe that core concept. It's something to be constantly under reform as well. Like the gardener. You have a garden that is your citizen. You have to go in daily basis to add water when the rain is not happening and to keep it sharp. Constant gardener could be a good answer for how we want to keep our society in good shape. And then the side effect is going to be easier for communities that they are marginalized, whether it's from the religion point of view, from the ethnical point of view, from the gender, from the age, so.
And sometimes watering flowers in our garden is not enough. Sometimes we need to change the entire soil because it's not fertile. Yeah, so it's also getting deeper occasionally.
Yeah, I think every soil can produce something. Sometimes it's not a question only just of physical food. Could be as well mental food. Because probably spending hours in the desert in Sahara can reach your mental ability to understand emptiness. Maybe that is the food that from time to time is good from the mental point of view, while those gardens that they are rich with good soil, they can provide only just physical food. So that balance.
I love this metaphors. Wonderful. I love it. Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. I definitely think we should have another one. I personally learned a lot, and I think I'm going to spend quite a bit of time reflecting today about some things that are there, and we do want them to change, but it's very difficult for them to change. But it takes a step at a time. And the fact that representation is extremely important, especially if you are there to serve the society. And if you don't really understand the society, you won't be able to serve it properly. You're going to be full of biases and assumptions and wrong decisions based on blind spots.
Education is a key question as well. The better educated society at different levels. Don't forget that the humans, we are kids always. We need to learn. Like those are there in the basic school, the school of life should be constantly reviewed. And as individuals, we have to take a responsibility of our actions, and we do have to stop blaming others because of our own failures. For me, it has been a pleasure to review this because it's a basic stuff when we are, as a security expert in my case, I try just to protect people, reputation, assets. But first, people, the priority, the prima facie, that is concept in legal terms, is the people, no lives. And then, those that they are in more fragile situation, then the priority. So sometimes it's like easier to do that exercise, to put the less privileged as a priority, and then step by step and gradually we will provide a better approach to protect our own society.
Yeah, maybe we could use this podcast for onboarding of new minds joining law enforcement.
I think from time to time, it would be more complex to have a comparative approach of how they are selected. But my lesson learned working with different forces is that we need to keep that in mind, because otherwise we are not able to defend our citizens, because we become forced just to defend the rights of those that they are in a very upper level power position.
Yeah.
And those taxpayer citizens, and they paid our salaries, or they are the less to be taken care by us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much once again, Manuel. It's been a wonderful conversation, and look forward to adding all the notes to our podcast and getting the feedback from our listeners.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You are very welcome, and my pleasure.
Thank you for listening. If you have any feedback, recommendations, or would like to be a speaker in our next episode, reach out via hi@beamreach-inclusion.com. Also, if you need our expertise with diversity inclusion training, would like us to conduct a comprehensive audit, or need a helping hand with DI strategy, don't be shy and get in touch. Stay tuned, and until the next episode.